Greetings, friends. It is Sunday afternoon on the Feast of the Ascension, and I've just been out working in my compost pile, getting ready to do a little bit more gardening this evening. But I remembered I hadn't filmed my homily video yet for the Ascension, so I'm doing that right now. Let me just take a little drink. So it's good to be with you and to spend a few moments talking about, thinking about, praying about this incredible mystery of the Ascension. Let's just start off by just recognizing that this is kind of close to the great destination or the climax, the goal towards which we've been traveling together spiritually all the way since Ash Wednesday. All of our discipline, all of our prayer, all of our liturgical celebrations have been oriented not just to prepare us for the day of Easter itself, but in preparing us for Easter to bring us to the Ascension, and then next Sunday will mark the great gift of Pentecost, the sending of the Holy Spirit. We could say that Jesus' earthly ministry led to the cross. His resurrection, though, led in a very significant way to Pentecost. Not simply that he would rise from the dead, but that in ascending to the Father, he would be then, with the Father, prepared to send the Holy Spirit. That gift which enables the life of the church, which ushers in this final age in which we live, the age of the Spirit, the age of the church. Unlike some of the other key moments and mysteries of salvation history, I do think that the significance of the Ascension may be a little less intuitive at times. I think of the great emotional traction and kind of maybe almost you could say like the obvious power that comes with the celebration of Christmas, the infinite Lord of the universe taking on flesh and dwelling among us. I think of the very evident joy that comes from the resurrection. Jesus buried in the tomb, dead as a result of treachery and torture and injustice, rising and being once again alive and alive in this glorious, this glorified body, this glorious way. I think those are somewhat obvious, at least at first glance. The Ascension, in contrast, almost seems kind of a little bit confusing, right? I mean, Jesus ascends to heaven, and the apostles, in a sense, are kind of left behind. There's a sense maybe in which they themselves are almost a little, maybe almost a little bewildered, right? In one of the accounts, the angel says, "Men of Galilee, what are you looking for?" Right? Kind of like go to work. They haven't yet received the gift of the Holy Spirit at the moment of the Ascension, and so they're not quite fully equipped for the ministry, for the life of faith that they're going to be called to. So Jesus going away after his resurrection, it almost seems like something that might have been a source of sadness or discouragement for them. And so why do we rejoice? Why is the Ascension such a great and important feast? Well, it has something to do with that whole trajectory of Jesus's ministry, and we oftentimes use kind of a physical metaphor of elevation, right? So we talk of Jesus descending, coming down into the human condition, and of course, God doesn't dwell above us a certain number of feet of elevation above sea level, and the human condition isn't like literally kind of below God in this sense, but metaphysically, of God is infinite, we are finite, so we're lesser than God in this sense, below Him. And so the metaphor of elevation is quite powerful. It's quite useful for trying to make concrete something which is very mysterious. So Jesus descends into the human condition, and in Holy Week, in a sense, he descends even further, not just to the limitations of human flesh, not just to all human experience except for sin itself, but even into the suffering of the cross, even to death, and deeper still, even to the land of the dead. Jesus breaks asunder the land of the dead, where all those who have died before his time were waiting, as the gates of heaven have been closed since the fall of Adam and Eve. And then Jesus begins this ascent, right? So the journey that he had gone on from the Father's right hand, we could say, in the incarnation, all the way to the very gates of hell, so to speak. He ascends, but at his resurrection, having come to life again, having returned with his glorified body, that ascension, that return to that intimacy with the Father in some way, isn't complete. And so in the ascension, he completes that journey. Now, theologically, perhaps there's a symmetry there that's satisfying. We can think about kind of maybe what was God planning from all eternity. Those are mysterious questions. But one thing that's of great significance for us, brothers and sisters, and this is what I want you to focus your attention on, is that Jesus rises to the right hand of God, rises to heaven, ascends to heaven, in the flesh, incarnate, right, with his glorified body. So if we would ask the question, is it possible for us to be perfectly united with God? We would say it certainly is possible because it's happened, right? In Jesus Christ, divinity and humanity, God and man are perfectly united for all eternity. And so this should give us great hope in the face of all of the struggles and challenges and all of the suffering and confusion that we encounter in this life. The enemy never ceases to whisper in our ear that we're defined by our failures, our hatred, our failure, our despair, that the darkest memory or the biggest disappointment in our lives, that's what reveals the truth of things. That's what the enemy wants us to believe. The Ascension shows us that that's simply not true, right? That the truth of who God created us to be is seen as Christ in the flesh, fully human and fully divine, ascends to the Father's right hand. And that path that Jesus has walked ahead of us, he longs for us to follow, that we would walk after him and in eternity be drawn into that perfect union with the Father that he himself already experiences and mysteriously, paradoxically in the flesh. So the Lord wants to redeem, can redeem, has redeemed the whole human person, and every single one of us is invited into that. C.S. Lewis has a beautiful essay that I have often returned to homiletically. It's called The Weight of Glory. It's the title essay of a collection of his essays. I strongly recommend it. And his kind of key idea in that book, The Weight of Glory, where he uses that phrase, is he says, when we encounter another human person, uh, in our day-to-day interactions, we often lose track of this fact. We often forget that were we to see them condemned in hell, we would be horrified beyond our imagining. But if we were to see them glorious in heaven, we would be tempted to worship them. Right? Every single person has this incredible dignity and potential. There's real peril of rejecting God, but there's great hope of saying yes to him and dwelling with him in beauty beyond our imagining. And that's just true of other people, brothers and sisters. I think it begins, we grapple with that truth when we look in the mirror and we say, Lord, that's true for me as well, right? The great peril that I might say no to you, Lord, but the great hope and joy, this invitation to say yes to you, and this lack of any real limit to what you can accomplish in me through grace if I will say yes to you. And so that's an invitation to recognize as an attack of the enemy, as a lie from hell, the enemy's invitation to distrust the Father's love, to distrust this invitation to glory, to kind of resign ourselves to failure, to resign ourselves to kind of weakness, and to say, oh, there's nothing I can do, I shouldn't try, right? This failure defines me. In the face of all of that, the Ascension tells us, no, that's not true. But that we have this scope of glory to which we're called is really the scope of the Father's love and the Father's beauty. And so I think that should give us great hope, and it should be an invitation for us to confront those places where the enemy's lie presents itself in our hearts and in our minds, and then knowing the truth that's revealed in the Ascension, to reject that lie and to get up again and to set out after God. And to renew our hope, not just for ourselves, but also for the people in our lives, maybe especially those people for whom it's the hardest for us to hope, the people whom it's hardest for us to love, the people, in whom we find great difficulty forgiving or asking forgiveness. For those places of struggle in particularly, we ask the God for new hope and a new sense of the scope of the glory that he desires for us. Many of you who are watching this may already have been able to go to Mass or may yet be able to go to Mass. All of us, in whatever circumstances, can make a spiritual communion. And when we approach the Eucharist, we encounter the risen Lord who offers us his grace and his power to accomplish this work of glory in us. One thing we can always do as we approach the altar is really just invite the Lord into those places where we're most discouraged, where we're most afraid, maybe where we're most prone and vulnerable to this enemy's lie that our failures define us. And in that very place of fear or of discouragement, we invite the knowledge of the Lord's glory instead to cast out fear and to fill us with new hope. Know of my prayers for you, brothers and sisters. Please pray for me as we celebrate this great feast of the Ascension.